dragon claw, wing and scale. Come now, let's examine a tale of the greatest beast ever considered. Another episode of Big Flying Lizards.
Before we begin, I think this is really an episode that, how do I say this? We're really diving into a show that really loses its head in this final couple episodes. You really can't make heads or tails of the situation. It's really just...
We really at this point get it by the neck.
You really get it by the neck. And you know what? You just really, you almost lose your mind just trying to look into things over here.
A little bit. I mean, I don't know if losing your mind's the right word. I almost feel like almost losing your top. It's like so quickly with the slice of a sword, or, that's figurative, obviously, but, things change so quickly, and it's such an interesting episode for, no reason at all.
No reason at all. I mean, I don't know. I don't get the hype. But before we get ahead of ourselves, welcome to Big Flying Lizards, a dragon movie and television podcast. I am your host, Bryce Wilson. I am joined once again by the one, the only, Chayce Hernandez.
I think just to get, right into this episode really does exemplify something every man, specifically men that might have a low taper fade, getting a bad haircut. And we've all been there,
I mean,
we take a little too much off the top. Shout out Jelly.
Shout out Jelly. Jelly would never take too much off the top.
Never.
He takes exactly how much you want on it. But we've already got Nana here in the chat saying puns right out the gate. And will there be barbecue after the beheading? An egg stallion on the menu. So, if you guys hadn't picked up, we are discussing A Game of Thrones, episode 9 and episode 10. Now, if it's all right with you, Chayce, I would love to just go ahead, dive right on in.
You want to drill into this?
I really want to drill into
I bet you fucking do.
Let's offshore this episode over here and just drill in deep real quick. Episode 9, Baelor. Robb Stark's army secures passage through Walder Frey's lands by agreeing to a future marriages for Robb and Arya. Mormont gives Jon Snow his Valyrian steel sword Longclaw, and Maester Aemon reveals he is a Targaryen. Wounded Khal Drogo is near death, but Daenerys forces Mari Mazdur to perform blood magic to save him. As Daenerys goes into labor, Jorah carries her into the forbidden ritual tent. Robb Stark sacrifices 2,000 men in a divisionary attack, allowing his main force to capture Jaime Lannister. Ned Stark publicly confesses treason to save his family. King Joffrey betrays the promise of mercy and orders Ned beheaded. Sansa is forced to watch while Arya witnesses from a crowd. I mean, this episode is just so significant in so many different ways. I don't know if you felt this way when watching it, but there was there was a lot of exciting things going around, but it really felt like there was just a dramatic buildup going over here, just a sense of dread. Like even just starting off with having to marry these people, you can tell the Freys are just sort of a corrupt family.
Yeah, this episode, I will say this is the odd thing about it. It built up to this episode so well for so long, and then you get it, and they do such a good job of making you sit with what you dreaded, like everything you feared, but you're like, no TV show has ever done this.
Yeah,
no show has ever done the things that they're about to do. And when they just follow through with it, and you're just sitting there like, what the absolute dread.
No, I mean, no show has really ever kicked off killing off the main character in the first, season. Even, I'm breaking my rule over here, even in Attack on Titan, Eren Yeager, spoiler alert, he's killed off in like the first 5 episodes, but he comes back. And you have several situations like that where you have main characters killed off and brought back. But Ned was like the first character where they're like, yeah, he's gone, out with the old, in with the new.
Well, and they do it in such a, like I would say, once again, Attack on Titan. Watching that for the first time was similar to this in the sense of like you're watching it, you just can't believe it. And they do such a good job because you're like sitting here like Ned's going to figure it out. He's going to get out. He's not going to get beheaded. And one thing I'll give, this goddamn show credit for, they do a way of not only like, killing people, but kind of rubbing it in your face. And they do that with him just as like much of just like his head's off and then they just like hold it. And you're like, oh,
It's Sansa right there.
yeah, she just faints.
I mean, what else do you do?
And what's funny is while this was happening, this was like one of those moments where the entire time I was sitting there and I was like, you're just hoping for something. You're like, Sansa, kill Joffrey. Like, you're just like sitting there trying to, in your mind, figure out some kind of justice. And from this point on out, you get none of that with this show. This show will never show you justice. It was at this moment that I knew, because everyone always told me, like, don't get attached to a character in this show. And so it gave you like a PTSD through the rest of the show. Because every time I was like, I kind of like that character. You're like, no, that's what they're trying to do because they're going to take them from me.
Yeah.
And it starts with Ned.
And it even like goes over if you try to like start liking the villains, like they start killing the villains too. Like no one is safe. This is a world where it's very brutal and it's like almost all the unlikable characters live.
No, that's one thing as I was rewatching this and I was kind of looking at it. Obviously there's some foreshadowing and obviously like Joffrey's actor, man, just some of the best acting, just the way that he's so smug and just all of it just rubs it right in your face. It's fantastic. But it's such fantastic writing and it's such a fantastic portrayal of like a book in the sense of like they just perfectly place people where you think that you're having an original thought. You're like, I like that person, but like you're watching this story unfold and it doesn't feel like it feels like it's live. You're, and that's one thing I will say Game of Thrones does super well is bringing people into the moment with moments like this, where it's literally, you're just like, and you also know that the season's about over. And so you go, where does it go from here?
Something that I wish a lot of other shows did that Game of Thrones does is they make the second to last episode the big episode. And the final episode, it has some big moments in it, but let's be real, there's no bigger moment than watching Ned Stark's head get cut off. And I mean, as we'll talk about in season 2, that's when they have their big epic battle. And then like it's just so, I think it's really good writing to be able to just have that second to last episode be the big episode. And then the the last episode, the 10th episode, is the episode that they sort of like wrap up loose ties or they hint at what's going to be going on later down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, honestly, once again, the balls on these guys, because Game of Thrones is a hard story to tell. It's a hard story to compact. And so when you you're like, hey, season 1, I don't think at this point had they re-signed for more seasons. Do you know that?
I think they had. There was overwhelming success. I'll plug into the bottom just talking about how it was, but I believe that they had at least signed on for a season 2 at this point, just how successful season 1 was.
But they already had it written and already recorded when they were releasing this. It wasn't like they were recording it at the time, you know what I mean? So to record this entire season knowing that you're chopping the main character, if you've never read the book, like you're just chopping their head off, knowing that is ballsy, because there was a lot of ways they could have maybe tried to avoid this and made it a little like more user friendly for a season in a sense. Like there's a lot of stuff there they could have played on, right? There's the Robert being killed could have been a bigger deal. Like they chose this as such a statement piece because they could have ended this season and told this story could have been told so much differently. The big ending of the season could have been Robert dying and Joffrey becoming like that could have been a really interesting lead off. And then they killed to end the season with your lead character dying, knowing you got 2 years before anyone finds anything out, is ballsy.
Well, not only that, but like at this point, Sean Bean as Ned is really the only character that people have really connected with as like this. Like, I really don't think people really fell in love with Peter Dinklage until season 2. Like, yes, he's good, but like he does, like, we don't see him. He's sort of like, he's an, I don't want to
He's
say
an
a
asshole.
huh?
He's just like an asshole. Like you're
Yeah.
sitting there, but you're not cheering for him or like on his side. I would say it's almost towards half to the end of season 2 where he really gets like his story told a bit more closely. But this entire season, you're just he's just floating through it. Ned truly is the star of this episode. You know, and it's intentional.
Yeah. And I also really think that it's just such a, like, all throughout this season, we've been talking about power and just how people have sort of been playing the game, how Varys has been playing the game, how Littlefinger's been playing the game, how Cersei's played the game. This, to me, we see Joffrey in this sense, and he's not playing a game. He's just taking that raw power and just like slapping everybody with it. Like, it's because, like, and we even, I think we talked about this last week about how, what if Ned decided to just go ahead with Littlefinger's plan and be the protector of the realm until Joffrey came of age, and then maybe they did away with him. I don't think that, I mean, Cersei wasn't able to control Joffrey. I don't know if Ned would be able to control Joffrey. Like, I genuinely think that Ned, even if he would have gone ahead, if he knew what was going to happen, if he knew that if he betrayed, like, he'd be betrayed, I still think he would have done that, because at one point, I mean, I think they even say later on in season 2 that Joffrey is worse than the Mad King. Like, and I don't think Ned would have like stood by and done that. And it's not like Cersei was gonna put up with it.
No, what's funny is as you're saying that, I'm thinking about it, and I actually almost think that Ned wouldn't have, because he kind of just gave up, and I feel like he wouldn't have given up had if he had that foresight into what Joffrey would have been. Like, I really think he thought, hey, he's gonna be like this. Cersei's running it, like it's a power thing. I don't think he understood how actually evil Joffrey was gonna be, and I think if he did, I think he would have done much more than just sit in that cave until he died. Like, I think he kind of just called it. I almost, it's like we were saying, is like he's a warrior. And I think if you give him something to fight for, he would have actually done something instead of being like, he just kind of called it politics and just called it quits. He's like, my kids, whatever, like, just let me die.
Well, something that Nana is saying here in the chat that I really agree with is there's no way Ned could have controlled Joffrey. Only Tywin could control him, which, again, that's a little bit of a spoiler for going on in the future. But even Tywin has some issues trying to control Joffrey. And I think that does come from a sense that Joffrey only rules through fear. He genuinely believes that fear is the best way to rule. And to this point, the only person that he's scared of is Tywin. And I think that you could make an argument that he was scared of Tyrion, but for a whole different reason, because especially as we'll see in season 2, Tyrion is able to just play the game so well and is literally running circles around Joffrey in a way that he can't keep up, and he couldn't touch him even if he tried. But it's one of those things where, and again, I'm excited for us to talk about it in season 2, but in the books, Tyrion is just so much. He's not just giving himself backup plans, he's giving himself backup to the backups to the backups, to the point where no one, he's not, like, it's something that's going through Tyrion's mind that he does not want to end up like Ned Stark. He does not want to end up like Robert Arryn. And something that's also interesting is most of the time people say that people in power, the people that deserve power the most, are the people that don't want it. But in Game of Thrones, it's almost like the people that are in power that don't want it are the worst at it. And the people that like want to be in power, low key, are the best. And I don't know if that's because they're trying to prove something. I don't know if that's just because they're trying to like show, but it's just something that I've noticed, at least up to this point.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And I think coming back to the main point, I don't even think Tywin really could control Joffrey. Because like there's those points, and that's looking really far ahead. And it really does. I think the main reason for that is like at the end of the day, everyone really just listened to the king because it's the king. Now, Tywin within his own family, definitely like the knights, everyone really listened to him. And I think Tywin would know how to pull strings to control Joffrey. But honestly, you see it at a certain point. I think Tywin kind of knew when to let something be something, and you kind of see him do that with Joffrey. He just kind of was like, yeah, like at this point, he's gonna do exactly what he's gonna do, and it's gonna run with fear. So like he started setting up things in the background with the bank, with like all this other stuff, kind of setting up other plans. But at the end of the day, like there was no other siblings, right? Like there was no that, and so I think in Tywin's mind, he was like, well, no one, Joffrey, no one's going to kill him. So as long as we're in power, we're in power. And then from there, he was making his, like, because realistically for him, he knew money ran everything. So I feel like for him, it was never really, I don't think he could control Joffrey truly, especially because, I mean, once again, this is Joffrey as a teenager. We've never even got him as an adult yet. And so, you imagine him in 10 years as a grown man, like, all bets are off the table.
Yes. I think there's just this level of like, to be fair, and something that I was realizing as I was reading the books, all the shit hit the fan like right here. Like Ned got arrested. They quickly took over the kingdom. And then that's when Robert's brothers started rebelling. And that's when Robb rebelled. And then we're going to find out that there's other people rebelling. So in the Lannisters' defense, they are sort of like having to work with what they've got. And I think that if Tywin had a chance, like if he didn't have to go fight the war, he would have gone to King's Landing and be like, all right, you're going to tell me to do what? You're going to tell me to do what? No. And it's like, yes, I agree that it's one of those things where people at the end of the day listen to the king. But something that also is brought up in the books that we don't really see here in the show is Joffrey is only powerful in King's Landing. And that's because he controls the gold cloaks and he controls the Lannister men that are there. But in the books, again, if Tywin were to come and he's in charge of his forces, he's in charge of pretty much the money of Westeros, I really do not think Joffrey would be like able to be like Tywin would be able to piss off Joffrey as much as he wants, and Joffrey could say, okay, well, off with his head, kill him, and the troops wouldn't listen. Like, because it is Tywin's troops at the end of the day. He's the one who's like supplying the army and
That's such a great question, though. Is it's like, or would they?
I don't think they would, because like Joffrey has shown that like yes, he's somebody to be feared because he's insane. Tywin has actually done things. He's complete, like he is.
I think there's a silver there because I do think there's some people that I agree with you would do that. I really do get the feeling that like a lot of them, it's like could go back and forth, and it does sound a little separated in the books about more. The big thing I think, though, truthfully, I think Joffrey was wicked enough that I think Tywin, in whatever way, would have got him killed. The big thing with that, though, this is a whole hybrid theory, and I think Tywin knew that, was Cersei, and she had her own tricks and stuff. So I think he kind of knew, was like, hey, if I lose, I'm kind of out.
Yes. But I think we are definitely getting far ahead.
We
are, which again, I am loving this hypothetical. I love going down these rabbit holes, but
anyways, back to the last episode.
Going back to the last episode. As somebody who's read the books, I do not think that they could have picked a better actor for Walder Frey than David Bradley. David Bradley played Filch in Harry Potter. He was playing this. He just does such a good job of I'm sorry. Welcome, Muhammad. I appreciate you joining here. When you ask, do you have any girl in the chat? The question is, we do have the occasional girl because, girls do like fantasy as well. So
I thought Muhammad was bringing the girls. I was under the impression that Muhammad bitches.
Yeah, Muhammad.
You didn't bring any. We kind of were waiting on that. We were off the impression that you was finna bring them.
Apparently, he didn't get the memo.
Well, You're just Hamid now because I know you ain't got mo bitches.
And there goes our Muslim contingency of the fan base. Anyways, Walder Frey, David Bradley, he just plays such an unpleasant, scummy old man, like super pervert. And like, even when you just get brought into the throne room and you're surrounded by all of his children, and he's just like openly talking about how he's like, yeah, you wouldn't be somebody unless I like squirted.
Yep, me into your freaking mother, who's your sister.
Exactly. And it's just one of those things where like you can tell that he's just such a crummy person.
Well, everyone feels it too. Even off the other characters, you get that vibe of everyone's like, ooh.
Well, and something that I feel like they do a really poor job in the show, but in the books is very evident, is the Freys are one of the most like they're a very wealthy family because their castle is the bridge across the river, and it's literally impossible to cross the river without like them. So they can charge people whatever they want to cross the river and people will pay it. So like they are a very wealthy family, and Walder Frey is just such a like he's a coward. That's really just what it is at the end of the day. He's a coward who's selfish, and even though he's made so many oaths, he's not afraid to break them if it's going to preserve him in the long run. And this might be a spoiler, but we see that he is quite willing to break his promises and betray people.
One of the worst episodes of my life.
But we are not there. We are not there.
We're not there.
But like I said, he's doing an amazing job, and I don't think I ever really gave him much of a look in Harry Potter because Filch is just such a background character. But the way he's able to deliver lines, the way he's acting, the way like he's genuinely a good actor. And
he really, really takes that character to a different spot.
Yeah. And I mean, like, sure, we don't hate him as much as we hate Joffrey, as we hate Ramsay, as we hate. Would you look at that? There seems to be a Walder Frey defender in the chat, Nana. Would you look at that?
You're going to jail.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and just throw that up on the screen. Everybody just take note that, curious.
That person exists.
Nana, we know where your loyalties lie with House Frey, it appears.
What is their defense? What do they have to say?
Well, this is what Nana says, and I quote, which is so funny that he is willing to break his oaths and is so scornful of those who break oaths with him. Actually, I guess maybe that's not a defense of him. I'm an asshole. Nana, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was like, well, there goes the chat.
Now we lost Nana. No, we can't lose Nana because Nana did make the comment of who's left in the fan base, which Nana, I was going to say you are the one who's left in the fan base, and we can't lose Nana. I'm sorry, Nana. Forgive me.
You came a little left field there, Bryce. Off with your head.
Well, apparently I'm quite aggressive, so that's something that needs to be done.
You're aggressive like a bulldog's aggressive, which is like if I didn't know what a pit bull looked like, I'd be like, ah.
It's the neck tattoos, obviously.
It's if you saw what I was looking at right now, which you are.
Yes. Yes.
It's the 7 rings, the watch. You're somewhere between a BIG video. I forget what's the name. What's the name of the fucking city that the kingdom's in? I'm forgetting the name right now because you're making me laugh. This is you're gonna make the remix, but instead of going back to California by Biggie, it's back to Westeros.
I kid you not, you might remember this. I have a workout shirt that says "Straight Out of Westeros." Now, I'm sure the audience is wondering, how is this man single? It makes no sense.
It's a tough economy, y'all. You know, it's hard to be a potential offshore drilling cartel member indeed. You have an affiliation or a affection for big bottom Latinas?
I plead the fifth.
You're going to jail, Bryce. You're going to jail, Bryce.
How does this always happen, Chayce? How does this always happen? Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones. It's a wonderful show.
Game of Tortas.
But it's as much as I do love this episode, there is some cool spots. I mean, we get to meet Shay, who's going to be a bigger deal later down the road. But and something that I have mixed feelings of, and I just really want your thoughts as somebody who hasn't read the books. But what is your thoughts of how much they're just trying to, I don't want to say humanize Shay, but like make her seem like Nana, I was in a straight I've got to throw this. I've got to throw this.
What does that say?
Game of thick Latino bottoms.
If there's not a porno about that, because there needs to be. Because growing up, we had every Call of Booty, Black Cocks. So someone better make this right now.
Remember what I was talking about? What was I talking about?
I think it's time. You've taken this podcast pretty far. You got your fancy little magazine, write up. You got some viewers. You got a chat you keep scaring off. Now imagine if we took this podcast and we just talked about big fat Latina bottoms. We're still same. It's just 6 hours and it's just Eva Mendes.
Welcome to big bottom Latinas. I am your
big bottom Latinas is going to give you a way different crowd than fat bottom Latinas. I need you to know that right now.
Thick bottom. Welcome to big.
I know why you're single, because you're a tree stump.
Okay, back to the podcast. Back to Game of Thrones.
I can't wait to see this on the cutting room floor.
We meet Shay, and they really try to humanize her in this show. And I really just want to ask you, like, what your initial thoughts of meeting her in these first couple episodes, because there's some similarities, but there's also some big differences between the book and the show. Because
I will say, sorry to cut you off, because I actually have some thoughts. What I have looked up and read actually when I was so curious about the show is, I think Tyrion character they took a lot of liberties with. He's not a likable character. He's not a character. He's a piece of shit. And they made this a real love interest, and it really was not. And it's odd how they did it in the show, knowing what the books are like, because if I had read the books before, you can kind of see that she doesn't really love him, but there's they kind of have this weird spot playing, and that it's kind of odd looking back at it. Now, having watched it, it definitely really humanizes Tyrion in the sense of he doesn't have anybody. He has literally nobody. It's an off shot chance that he thinks he's going to die. So he just has sex with this, whatever, this prostitute. But really, when I knowing what I know now, I feel like her character is really miswrote, and I think that had they done it more accurately to the book, I think it would have been a better character. I think it would have added more to the story, to be honest.
I completely agree, because, well, here's the thing. I would have almost rathered that they'd gone full in with it being a love interest, and then found a creative way to make what happens in season 4 happen and make sense, because it seems like they tried to have their cake and eat it too, where they're like, hey, she's a love interest. She actually loves Tyrion. It's not something that's her using him, but also, spoiler alert, she betrays him in the end. And it's really for no good reason other than he's using him. And I just wish that they would have stuck to a lane, because I would have almost even appreciated they'd gone a completely different direction with how she died, where she was threatened by Cersei to almost would have wanted. Again, we're getting so far ahead.
But I think it with this character makes sense, because I'm with you. Because that part is why I know what the book says, because it made so little sense to me. Her climax as a character, pun intended, literally makes so little sense that it had me Googling why did that happen? Why, and that's how I figured out oh, she's miswrote from the book. So They really, there's just a lot of opportunity there. A lot of the scenes that she's in, they really don't add a lot to either character. Other than the fact of like, I really don't know what they were doing. So it doesn't make Tyrion seem like he's, I think what they were trying to do is make it seem like Tyrion was living on the fucking edge of like, hey, I could die at any minute. They're looking for anything to get me. And realistically, what they did was just kind of put some really weird love scenes in, or, it really, like, what do you do? What do you mean she's freaking out over Sansa? Like, it didn't make any sense for the ending of that character.
Well, and something that I especially think is just so. I think what they really tried to do with this character is they tried to take Tyrion's initial wife, who's a lot, I don't want to say a lot bigger of a character because you still never see her in the show, in the books, but she gets brought up quite a bit. And you find out that she wasn't actually a whore. She was like, the story that she told him was true. And Jaime was forced to lie to Tyrion about it. And so, like, after what goes down with Shay, he keeps thinking about her and keeps like thinking, oh, I need to find her. And like, that's the only person who's ever actually loved me. And it just becomes like a strong obsession that drives Tyrion insane. And it just seems like they're trying to like put Shay's character in with Tysha's character and make them one and the same. Again, it just doesn't make sense once we get to season 4 because it all just falls apart.
Yeah, I was gonna say that actually makes sense with what you're saying character wise, like with what we get. But yeah, it made no sense. Absolutely no sense.
No. But I also do love, just it's on the topic, but like I love how they got around having an epic fight scene cut out of the show by just literally like one of his troops literally hitting him in the head, and it just like cut to after the battle, because in the books that battle was like a pretty epic battle where Tyrion was like leading a part of the vanguard. He was with the Mountain at one point. The Mountain was like commanding, and they were killing like Stark men, and it was like a big epic battle in the book. But they obviously didn't have the budget for that in season 1, so they were just like, okay, well, Tyrion's knocked out, and then they just like fast forward. They literally yada 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 to the end of the fight.
They do it in a good. It works.
It does work. I don't like. I think it works really well to the point where it one shows that Tyrion is not a fighter, which is evident in the books as well. Even though Tyrion's able to like make some like make a difference, but it's still showing he's not Jaime. But two, it also just like it sort of keeps building up that tension where we don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I think there's that, but also this sounds kind of odd, but I feel like if they had shown it, it would have been too much too soon for like big moments in season 1. And at the end of this show, like, you're having shit back to back all the time, which once again shows a contrast into what they were trying to do. Because once again, end of the show, they are cramming every single episode. You're having an event like that, but you also have it earned. You've had the backstory, you've put your time in, but it's rushed compared to the first season where they spent, the entire season building up to one moment and then let the moment shine. They didn't try to outdo it. They obviously didn't have the budget, but yeah, I thought it worked really well. Like it actually, I think fit that part of the story better than like actually showing the fight would have.
Yeah. Well, and also something that I think really helps is the director, Alan Taylor. He directed this episode and he also directed the next episode. So if you look at it like that, I'm sure he very much had the attitude of like, okay, I don't need to say everything in this episode because I've got control over the next. And I feel like when you do something like that, it gives the director a lot more creative freedom to be able to determine where the story is going and properly build up. And again, I don't want to dive too much into this because it's going to make a lot more sense to talk about it in later seasons. But I feel like in these first couple seasons, the show does a great job of still building up to a big epic conclusion while still having like a lot of interesting things going on. But once you get to like season 5, once you get to season 6, once you even get to like season 7, it seems like it's just so, I don't want to say boring, but like the first like 5 to 6 episodes, it's literally just like, oh, this next episode at the end of the season, it's going to be big. It's going to be, but it's literally like all just build up. And it's just boring in my opinion. Like I really think that season 6 is one of like has one of the best fight scenes and one of the best battle scenes in the show, but everything leading up to in the season 6 is just so boring to me.
Yeah, I really think it comes down to like what I was in for, and we've kind of said a lot of times. There is just so much to this story, and they just rushed it. You know, I don't think anyone in this fucking planet. I really think a good range, 15 season. I think 15. You can go 20. Truly, like if you were really being, nothing there to tell like this story mad thoroughly. Because I think later in the seasons, like there's a lot of scenes where they're just showing characters traveling. They're showing them in the woods. They're this. And I also think that they would have given them more time to do more complex, because once again, the first couple of seasons, everything builds up to like a big, big moment. But after, honestly, I would say into the third season, you're kind of over that. You've had, like, you kind of get, it's predictable. And so, but then they really start cramming, right? They have we won't have to get into this in later episodes, but like, there's the Stannis thing. There's like, they just, there's so many big moments that they kind of, what's funny, because the way it works with this fight, where they like knock Tyrion out and then, whatever, they do that with a lot of moments through this entire show. And I think after you get to season 3, it really stops working. It's like, no. Like, we would have liked that moment. We would have liked to see, once again, season 2 has a couple moments like that with the Baratheon family, where I'm like, you really just did that very quickly. Like, that was a little too easy. There was no build up to that. Like, and there's a lot of moments like that. And so I feel like that's kind of the issue. They kind of take the quick travel route a little too quickly with this story more and more often as they get to the end of it.
No, I completely agree. And I think it just makes us treasure these first couple seasons that much more doing that. And I'll say this, I know Chayce, that you could say that there'd be 15 to 20 seasons. Austin is somewhere throwing his phone against the wall saying like, no, 10 is good. 10 is a good amount of seasons for the show.
Okay. I don't know Austin as well as you. Does he have a favorite shitty sitcom? Because if he's ever watched The Office, he loves How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, he loves How I
He
Met Your
fucking
Mother.
would. That's a terrible show. How many seasons of that bullshit are there? Hold on. Alexa, how many seasons of How I Met Your Mother are there? She doesn't even want to talk about it.
There are 9 seasons of How I Met Your Mother.
9 seasons, Austin. You're fucking close, dude. By the skin of your fucking teeth. There's 9 seasons. You're so fucking close.
But how many episodes in each season?
Great question. Alexa, how many episodes are there in each season of How I Met Your Mother? That piece of shit. No. Austin, you piece of shit. There's 208 episodes of that goddamn show. There's 22 episodes a season. Shut the fuck up. How many times, how did they tell the story in How I Met Your Mother? How was the book? I need 30 seasons of Game of Fat Bottom Latinas. 30 minimum.
You heard it here first, folks. You heard it here first.
Explain to me how we're talking about Game of Thrones and we're talking about How I Met Your Mother now. Kind of the same thing if you think about it.
Nana is right here saying, here on the Big Liz podcast, our list of topics continue to grow ever bigger while our fan base shrinks ever smaller. I wonder what made him say that.
I can't see the chat, so I don't even know if that actually exists. You could be lying.
It's a fake chat, people. Let me tell you, it's a fake chat.
There's the real him.
The bigger numbers, let me tell you, the numbers are so much bigger than what's actually shown in the bubble right there. Before we talk about episode 10, I really do want to talk about the conversation that Jon had with Maester Aemon, because it's a very significant conversation, in my opinion. Just because we, find out that Maester Aemon is actually a Targaryen, and the last Targaryen that we know of on Westerosi soil. And he's talking about, like, he's telling Jon, he's like, look, I understand, like, you have to make a choice. And it's not going to be an easy choice. You can either choose honor or you can choose family. Like, the gods tested me when I was old, so I couldn't really make a difference, but I still was filled with anger. I still hate the Baratheons for what they did. And it's just such a fun little lore drop. Especially, like, it does feel like in these early seasons, like, oh, why did they introduce that so quick? I feel like that would have been a lot more fun to like play out, where Maester Aemon is just this very wise, borderline wizard like character, and really you don't understand how he's still alive because he's the oldest man in Westeros, and then you find out, like, boom, he's got that magic dragon blood.
Yeah. I think, once again, I think coming into this without reading the books, that scene could have had a lot more significance because they do it so subtly. Like, oh, he's a Targaryen, and you're like, I think they could have done a better job of making that very. Because, like you said, I think if they'd waited, it'd been a better moment.
Well, it's also one of those things where I think the show does a very poor job explaining how much of a, I don't want to say cripple, but just how old and how feeble he actually is. Because he's supposed to be blind, and it seems like half the shots that we see of him, he's looking straight at the people he's talking to, while the other time he's just like staring off into space. I would have preferred that they, again, like, I don't know what the show is against contact lenses. Like, how hard is it to give like him some contact lenses that make his eyes like pearly white or whatever it is to make that, like, people have like blind eyes.
Yeah, I agree, because you definitely don't pick up on that. You think he's old and that, but you don't pick up on how disabled he is. I don't know if there's a reason for that, but yeah, you definitely don't. I'm just now learning that he was blind.
He was blind.
Blind?
We gave him keys to the car. Why? What was he doing blind?
You sure they're not saying that because there wasn't oil in his eyes?
Drill, baby, drill. Let me tell you that we're going to take the oil out of his eyes. We're going to drill, baby, drill. That's going to fix our housing process, let me tell you. Make Westeros
Frack.
Make Westeros great again.
I wonder what they would do if we made that shirt.
Well, I really like Maester Aemon, and once we get a little further on in the show, once we make it to where we find out what Jon's real name is, spoiler alert, there's some fun theories on what his real name actually is, and we'll discuss that later. But in the meantime, Chayce, I would love to dive into the next episodes.
I think we absolutely should. I think we've covered all the conspiracy theories and How I Met Your Mother and all of the important parts of that episode.
Everything but Game of Thrones.
Quite literally. But yeah, let's go ahead.
All righty. Episode 10, Fire and Blood. The Northern and the Riverland Lords declare Robb Stark the King of the North. Tyrion is appointed acting hand of the king by Tywin. Jon Snow attempts to desert and join Robb, but is convinced to honor his vows by his Night Watch brothers. He joins an expedition beyond the wall. Yoren smuggles Arya out of the city and disguised as a boy. Daenerys discovers Mira's magic left Drogo in a vegetable state and caused her son's death. She mercy kills Drogo in an act of love. Daenerys builds a funeral pyre for Drogo, placing her dragons and Mirri Maz Duur on it, and walks into the flames. She emerges unharmed with 3 newly hatched dragons. And what a way to end just an amazing epic. Like, I know we were giving Daenerys a hard time in the first part, but like they made this convincing, like, at this point. The only critique that I would give about this is, in the books, the Dothraki did not respect Daenerys. Like, they respected Drogo, and then they did not respect Daenerys until after the dragons were hatched. And they seem to show like levels of respect to her before that happens, which, I mean, it is what it is, but I almost would have rather them like, oh shit, like, she is like a borderline godlike figure. And like there was a whole like she was like appointing her blood riders, and each one of them they're like, no, we can't serve a woman, like that's crazy. And then the dragons were born, and they were literally like, pick me, I'll be your blood rider. I'll be over here. And it's just really fascinating to me that, I mean, I'm just wish that they would have allowed Emilia Clarke to really cook in a believable way rather than just being like, oh, she's special because she's special. Like, I wish they would have really given her a chance to develop that character, because it really just feels like they made her just tell the audience like, hey, look, like this is who you are, rather than this is who you're going to be.
Yeah, I really think it's hard to say because I think they were going for such a contrast with her character. And I really think it's kind of interesting because she does, like, at this point, I think she won a lot of people over. Because up to this point, I really was like, it's cool. Like, you just don't really get what they're doing, especially if you've never read the books. At this point, though, you're bought in. You're like, oh, dragons. Because once again, I believe this is the first sight of dragons.
It is, which means there's going to be a dragon grade.
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely, the big fat bottom dragon grade. Oh my god. Anyways, can we talk about something real quick that I kind of need cleared up? Is there really any Mexicans in this show?
This was such a big European project that I think they were mainly just trying to take like people from Europe.
Now, back to this dragons. Yeah. So this was the first this moment to me really made her character, I think, interesting there more. Because I think to the average view, I think this is another thing I will say with Game of Thrones. They really were making this show for the average viewer, and that's why it's not 15 to 20 seasons long, and all of this stuff. But I think with that, her character gives Marvel.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. And again, like this show knows how I feel, but I hate lazy writing in general. I don't hate lazy writing specifically when it comes to women. I hate lazy writing just all around. And I think that you can girl boss in a very crafty way, but I also think that when you just do a lazy, like that's where you start to see a lot of these like shows that in movies that flop because they're just lazy about it. And
The Marvels.
what? I can't hear you. I didn't hear what you said.
No oil? What? No.
No oil.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think it's well, the weird thing is with that character is they girl boss, but they really didn't give her any. There's no, like, there's so much to the character, her brother, the Dothrak, like, and they just don't give, like, the fact that she had to do this at all. The scene is really cool. Like, the scene is awesome because the scene's awesome, but it falls a little flat,
Yeah.
Like, it wins because it wins, but
again, I don't think that's the actress's fault. I think
no,
it's mainly just the writing behind it, because the writing is just trying to make her like almost a Masonic Messiah like figure, but they're not giving her the support to be that Messiah like figure, to be the big epic hero of the story.
Yeah, I think if they had done that, and it really, her story, if they were going to go this route, they should have just been bigger, if that makes sense. Like, the Dothraki should have been scarier. The death should have been more violent. The dragons, the fire, it should have been more shown. Should have been scarier. Should have been, like, they should have just, like, if they were going to go that route with it, but then maybe it was budget. But like, they went this route with her, and then it's just like,
Well, something, and it's funny you say that, because I think what would have made this scene so much more impactful, because in the books, it's from Daenerys's point of view the entire way. So like when she steps into the flames, she's like she's seeing a vision of Drogo's spirit like rising out of his body and like getting on a flamed horse and riding up to the heavens. And then like she's just surrounded by flames, and all she sees is flames, and she's hearing cracking noises. And then like it almost goes silent, and then the next thing you know, like she's talking about how she's just in the middle of like,
yeah, that would have been sick. Well, else would have been really, honestly, a cool version of this? If they had somehow done a flashback. This would have been a great time for a flashback. Like, walks in there, she sees that, maybe in this, and you know what? Actually, hold on a goddamn minute. This could have gave some really, if they had been thinking, some good foreshadowing. What if it went back to like, the Mad King to her like they could have put some foreshadowing in there in such an interesting way of like how this story ends up going, of like the parts of the bloodline that are in her in the extremes. Like there could have been done so interestingly.
So it's funny you say that. And again, like, I don't want to get too much down this tangent, but I think it's just so appropriate. I agree. Now, I remember Nana pulled up that there was apparently some interviews done where they discussed that they really wanted to stay away from doing flashbacks because I think they're mainly wanting to do as many shows as possible. So that's that. But something that I think would have really done a great job at us showing where the character goes later down the line and also makes a lot more sense on how she ends up the way she is. I would have almost loved it where you could have almost heard the whisperings of like burn them all. Like almost like it's like in the
Yeah.
wind, like because that's what she's doing. She's burning Mira Mazdur. And I know there's some more significance in the book, but if you're just going with what you've got, just almost like she's standing there, she's getting the pyre, and then like you just hear almost like a whisper in the wind, just burn them all. I think that would have hit so much harder. And again, would have
Yeah, that scene could have been, that would have made it impactful, because I think it's why it falls flat, is there's no emotional trigger. Like, yes, there's like the death and there's all of this stuff happening, but like just the way it's done, it just feels so flat. Once again, great scene. This is us like I feel like the scene's great because it's great, but like they just missed a moment to like really. So for example, when her brother dies, the way that scene, the fire, like that scene, like even though I didn't like how he died, it was like an impactful scene. I feel like there could have been more. They could have showed his spirit leaving her. There's so many things they could have done.
yeah. No, I agree. And again, like I don't want this to be really just us bashing on Amelia Clark because she did such a good job with what she was given, but I feel like that the directors and the writers could have done so much more to help
Which, yeah,
support her.
100%. Because once again, I still think her character and her character arc still one of my favorite parts of the show. But
There's a
there
reason.
was so much more there. That's what makes it painful. But let's not get lost on this, because there's a lot of shit that happens in this. Because this is Arya Stark's coming of age.
Yes, it's fascinating because, well, before we get into that, Nana keeps bringing this up in the comments, and I need to give it credit because I agree. Yes, Raw. I'm gonna try to say the name. I'm gonna really try to say his name. Nana, tell me how bad of a job I do in butchering his name. Ramin Jawadin. Ramin Jawadin. That is the composer of the music in A Game of Thrones. Fun fact, he has come up as number one musician artist in my Spotify wrap up for 3 years in a row.
That's why.
Does that mean I have a problem? Absolutely. That definitely does mean that I have a problem. But I completely agree. Like he's doing a really good job up to this point. But in this episode specifically, just he was cooking. He was cooking. And like that just makes all of this more impactful. Like just the level of how he's able to bring this like music in and just make it so it's so much more meaningful of a scene with just able to support what's going on. And I really don't think that there's anyone else that could have done a better job.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is a really big highlight of this last episode. I don't know. They do a good job. There's just so much more for the taking.
Yeah, I agree. But going back to what you were saying, sort of like the scattering of the Starks, but also like there's definitely like I think we're seeing a lot of just it's fascinating for us to see because we're seeing two young boys named as king. And the funny thing is like we look at Robb and yes, the actors are just so much older than they actually are being portrayed. Robb is supposed to be 15. Like that's
Well,
the crazy. Yeah, Robb is supposed to be 15 right now when he's named king.
That
And
wouldn't show well on.
No. And like Joffrey is supposed to be 13, I believe. We're seeing these boy kings being named, and it's so fascinating because like I think the show does such a disservice to Robb in so many different ways. They show him so much more mature in the books, and he's able to be such a great king. He makes several mistakes, but at the end of the day, he does a great job.
Well, I also think that's a big thing that would have, knowing he's 15 makes the mistakes he made make sense. And I think that that could have, but at the same time, I don't think that I don't know if it would have worked.
Yeah, I agree. And I apologize. Joffrey was 12 in the books at this point in time. But like again, just showing that comparison. And these boys are leading armies. Like Robb is legitimately leading armies while Joffrey is playing at leading armies there.
Yeah,
And
that makes so much more sense on why like everyone's so impressed with Robb.
yeah. Well, and also like why people keep questioning him at the beginning, because like this is the scene where they're it's I really love the scene. It's such a minor scene, and especially where Robb's character goes, it's easy to forget. But it's where Robb is in his tent. He's got his generals around him, and they captured a spy for the Lannisters. And the Lannisters spy comes in and they're like, okay, how should we kill him? Should we like torture him this way? Should like what should we do? And Robb like goes and like, hey, so how much did you count? And the troop told him how many troops he counted, and he's like, release him. And then he like told him like, go tell Tywin Lannister we're gonna try to see if he really does shit gold, and sends him on his way. And all the generals are like, what are you doing? Like, why are you releasing this spy? He's gonna go tell Tywin. But we come to find out it was all part of his plan. He wanted Tywin to know like where his troops were because he wanted Tywin to believe that he was an overconfident boy coming to attack him rather than cross the river. And that allowed him to go and capture Jaime. And it's just again showing how yes, he was emotion like he may have been age-wise a boy, but his father had prepared him for war and for governing and leading, and like it was just a stark difference. Stark difference between the Lannister king and the Stark king.
Yeah, I think that's what makes his character so painful in general is he would be such a good king. Like you just like he really would. He really,
Yeah.
really would. But yeah, no,
Like
that makes that character make a lot more sense.
I will have to say, like, I do a lot of what ifs in my head on like what would happen if something would have been slightly different. And the biggest what if for me is like, what if Robb didn't make some of the mistakes that he did in that show? Because like I think that genuinely could have like had such a big impact on where the story actually goes. And
And
obviously it makes it more interesting, but
yeah, and that's kind of I think a great point is like I feel like this is a crazy thought. And I think this is the funny thing with Game of Thrones. Is, they're like, don't live your life with any regrets. Game of Thrones leaves you with lots of regrets. Because I feel like the story with Robb not making some of the mistakes that he makes might have been a better story in some ways. But it's hard to say because like the whole point of Game of Thrones is like suffering, pain.
and we'll talk more about it when we get to season 2, but like Robb never made a mistake on the battlefield. He was almost a perfect war general. It's his trusting and honor nature. That's again like what got him into trouble. And again, like it may not make too much sense for the honor portion compared to the books, but and again, when we get there, I'll discuss and go into detail because it makes so much more sense when we do that. But I also really appreciate because again, like they really are going through the window that the Starks are the main character. And this is really where we start to see the Starks just start to scatter. Arya is going on the King's Road trying to return home. Sansa's stuck in Winterfell. Robb is at River Run rallying his army to build up and go and attack Tywin. And then Bran and Rickon are up at Winterfell ruling. And then, of course, Jon is about to go north of the wall. Like, we haven't even talked about how they're about to send an army of the Night's Watch up to the north of the wall.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing. They just put so much into this last episode because there's that part of Jon where like they're going on that expedition, and you're seeing him prepare and everything there. You have the shit going on with Robb, Arya. But one thing that I thought was interesting rewatching this, because once again, they do such a good job, which coming back to this, of they put scenes in there to really like it's the problem with Game of Thrones is it's the best of writing, it's the worst of writing. And I really think that describes it super well because it's like there's the scene where as Joffrey and they're all sitting in there and he's watching someone try out to be his jester, right? And the guy like sings this song about, you know, his so and so getting Robert getting or no right yeah Robert getting killed by the boar, yada yada. And then at the end of it, like no one's clapping, everyone's like uncomfortable. And then Joffrey just starts clapping and everyone does as soon as he does, and he goes, haha, so you like, what do you prefer, hands or tongue? And he's like, everyone needs hands, sire. And like he's like, all right, cut his tongue out. And like the whole time he's glancing over at Sansa and just torturing that poor girl.
Yeah.
And they do such a good job of that through this last bit of like showing scenes, whether it be Robb, like when they show the spy or showing him in the room. They do such a good job of doing, you know, 30-second clips of just showing the nature of these characters. And even with Arya, like as she hops on the road and you're finally getting some stuff there. But like and even Cailin, you know, we haven't really even talked about her a lot through this whole spot of her being like kind of the communicator and turning into this, you know, which again, her character being kind of dissolved into that. Like there's so much shit going on.
No, I agree. And again, I just want to add a little bit of context because, again, the show does such a poor job explaining this. So that guy was technically under trial. It wasn't like he was trying to be a jester. He was under trial because he had performed that song at a bar, at a tavern, and it's considered treason. And that's why they were there and why everyone was so uncomfortable. But again, like just showing the differences, I think this is a great way to segue because one of the most meaningful, impactful scenes to me, especially with Robb, is when we see Robb. I assume it's right after you find out what happened. He finds out what happens to Ned, and he has his sword, and he's just hacking at a tree while just sobbing, and like you just see that raw emotion from him, and he's like crying to his mother, saying that he's going to kill all the Lannisters, and his mother is just like almost calmly like, they have your sisters, we have to save your sisters, but after we save your sisters, we're slaughtering them all, like we're killing them all, we're not leaving a single one alive. And just taking that and looking, I don't think we ever see any like remotely like that level of emotion that Joffrey felt about Robert, who he believed was his father, or even like a level of respect that he had for Jaime, who's his actual father. Like there's just not that level of like love and appreciation, or like the only thing that Joffrey runs off of is fear. He thinks fear is the only thing that's worth it. And also just on another side note that adds to this, and again, it talks more about this in the books, is the reason that Joffrey is doing this is one, to Sansa specifically, is one, he enjoys seeing people in pain and suffering, and two, he feels embarrassed that Sansa saw him in such a weak spot when Arya like set her wolf on him, and he's always embarrassed about that, and so he wants to humiliate Sansa in every way he can in putting her in situations. So again, that's why he's just so dedicated to just making her life a living hell.
Yeah, that doesn't come through in the show at all. And one thing else we also haven't gotten into is because I agree that scene with Robb is big, and I think once again the Starks are such a great lead into the show of showing like because once again I really would love to have seen the North versus Westeros straight up. Like
Yeah, it's just hard because like yes, I agree, because if it was just the North, there's a city that's it's called the neck, and it's where Moat Cailin is, and that's a very defensible spot. The problem is he claimed the Riverlands, which is the most accessible, and like the Riverlands, just again, I'd love to see it. We just need to throw it in the AI simulator and
That's
see
what I'm
what
saying.
comes out of
Well,
it.
and you would have because the big thing that you see is it's like you see these, you have, obviously she's becoming the Queen of Dragon. Like there's so much stuff happening at this point in the season where I feel like later in the show it gets so the storyline kind of it's odd. Like at this point in the show, you have no fucking idea of how this is going to end. And towards the end of the show, you go, I know how it's going to end. Like there's only this option. I just don't know what they're going to do with that. But at this point in the show, there is a lot of options. There's a lot of people vying for the throne. There's a lot of things happening. But one thing I would like to come back to, Jaime Lannister in this last, episode or two, that character, that actor really, this is where I feel like his character really evolves a bit is when he gets captured. And this is also when he, getting close to a lot of his line of what he actually goes through because he doesn't return to Westeros for a while. And so, it's interesting how revered, because once again, how scared of them they are, where he is tied up like 2 or 3 times, hands behind, but like, they won't, nobody can be over there, no night. Like you have to have like guards all around. And I think that really goes to show like about how feared his character was.
Yes. Is there anything else that you necessarily want to go into, Chase, before we go into the dragon grade?
I think that's it.
Well, rather than doing 3 grades for the 3 dragons, they're all pretty much the same in design as of right now. And also, just as a heads up, I'm going to be doing a dragon grade as they make significant changes. I don't think there's going to be a dragon grade when we do it in season 2, just because the dragons don't develop enough to be a big deal. But in season 3, we'll make another dragon grade talking about it. But on that note, we're going to dive into our dragon grade. Each week, we do a dragon grade, grading the dragons that we see in our media. We have 5 different categories that we grade them in. We grade them in design, special effects, character, film, and X Factor. We grade them all on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being abysmal, 10 being incredible, and 5 being okay. Now, Chase, we are talking about the little baby dragons. What do you give these baby dragons for design on a scale of 0 to 10?
Honestly, I'm gonna go solid. I'm gonna give him I'm gonna go high on this. I'm gonna go 8.
Going 8. All right, well, talk me through it.
I think they just obviously this is still so new. They do such a good job. These are classic looking dragons. They look sick. The way they're brought in is sick. The way that they have to be hatched is sick by design. I think it's a classic design. And it just looks good. It fits the actual show. They don't look like they're animated fake. They don't look like they don't fit in. And to me, it's just it's a classic dragon done well.
I agree. One of my favorite things about them is just how much color they actually have. It seems like as they get bigger and they get older, they lose a lot of that color, which I do think is a wink and a nod at like how reptiles typically are, because I think reptiles do lose a lot of their color as they grow older. But especially if you look at Drogon, you can really see the red. You can really see how the black is speckled, and then how much his horns and his spikes are just promoting it. I do really like it. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of the wyvern look. I much prefer the dragons with 4 legs rather than 2 legs. But again, I still think that it looks pretty good. I'm going to give it the 7. I think that it looks very good. But going on to special effects, Chase, I think you showed a little bit of your hand. And again, I know we have only seen them for probably a total of 30 seconds to a minute in this season. But what do you give the special effects on a scale of 0 to 10?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna go 7.5. Like I said, we don't get a lot of them, but once again, it looks good. Like she comes walking out of the fire. They're moving. You get a semblance of the power that they have. I just think they did a really, really solid job with these. The special effects, which is one thing I like, isn't overdone. They don't show their whole hand with these dragons.
Yes. I also really think, because in this first season, reportedly the budget was around $50 million, which again, we look at 50 million and we're like, that could change a life over here. But we're talking about a high-end HBO TV show. 50 million is really not that much. So with what they were able to do with everything else in the show, I think it's really impressive that they were able to make the dragons look as good as they did. Again, this is going to feel like nitpicking, but if you look at this picture and if you go back and watch it and specifically look in this picture, I'll include it in the video here, but you can see that Drogon is on Daenerys's shoulders and the nails are just sort of sitting right there. That would be completely just gouging into her skin. It was like really how it was. But again, like they don't want to necessarily do that because I think how the it's just me nitpicking there. Again, looks really good, especially for the budget, especially for the time. I think I'm gonna match you bar for bar. I'm gonna go 7.5 right there.
That's what I like to hear.
Now, this is gonna be interesting because I'm really curious to hear what you say on this, but what are you giving the character of these dragons based off of what we've seen so far in the show? And again, I'm very curious and I'm excited to have this conversation.
That's tough. Because once again, it's such a short window. I'm going to have to go 5.
Okay, 5. Talk me through it.
I think it's almost a null. It's just not it's not enough to really to know what's, in the coming seasons we get to see like a lot more. But I feel like at this moment, like the actual, it's just, I'm going to go 5 because it's almost a null to me. It's like, yeah, like it was fine. Like you don't really walk away with any idea of any of that.
Yeah. Well, I agree. Where I think I'm going is I'm going to be tying things that may not be necessarily the character of the dragons, but it's also leading up to it because these dragons almost like represent a victory for Daenerys. They represent like everything that she has lost and had to give up. She's lost her family. She's lost her land. She's lost her throne. She lost her brother. And she just lost the love of her life. She lost her army. And pushing through all of this comes not like it seems like it's such a little thing, but it ends up being so huge. She gets these dragons. Now, again, I wish they would have made it so it was a little bit more of a epic thing for her to actually receive them. I wish that if I could redo it, I would have it all from her point of view when she did it. But I still think that her getting these dragons and all of the Khalasar that's left over worshiping her and treating her like a goddess is still very impactful. I think all of that tied together, and maybe this is me stretching, I think it's a good. I think what they contribute to their personality to that, it's good. I like it. I'm giving it a 6.
I think you're stretching,
Call me
big
Luffy.
time. Facts, because none of that had none of that to do with any of that. But I hear you're not wrong. But I'm keeping it. I'm keeping the grade purist. I'm not going outside of the dragons like he was. And then you did all of that. You said all of that to give it a 6.
I said it all.
To give it a 6.
I said all that, gave it a 6. Now, this one, I mean, you can grade it however you want. How I'm going to be particularly grading this, Chayce, is I'm going to be grading the film score for the season overall. If you want to just grade the episode they're in, you're welcome to do so. But I'm going to be grading just this season overall. But on that note, what do you give the film score here on a scale of 0 to 10?
I think where you're going big, I'm going to go niche. And I'm going to isolate it down to just the scenes that dragons are included in, which is the eggs, how the eggs are acquired. So only dragon-related scenes is what I'm going to rate here. So if the dragons aren't in some way related in these scenes, I am not going to be talking about that. And I think I'm going to go right here with the 8. The reason I say 8, it's a little too convenient how she gets the eggs. I think it was a wedding gift, okay. And then she kind of is like allured by them, sure. And then she just has this she just puts them in the fire just cuz, and then walks out with them. So it's like, I think that part of it is a little too convenient, but I do think it makes up for it in the fact of like how fucking cool the character is. How cool it is you have a dragon-born character. I think that is an amazing idea. I think although the execution could have been better of bringing those to life, the idea of having her go into the fire and then walk out with dragons, like naked, almost like, you get this pure vibe that they're trying to be like she's born again. You're kind of getting that vibe again, but walking out with dragons naked and having them just like, that moment, I think's really, really cool. I think it's a well done. I think they could have done a better job with the build up to that with the eggs. I could think maybe she has more interactions with them. Maybe she's maybe there's some way that I don't know exactly if the book goes off of this a little differently, but it would have been interesting to see her maybe be dragonborn before that moment. And I think that could have been some cool spots. But overall, I think the actual initiation into having dragons was well enough to give it an 8.
Well, it's funny enough, like Nana is over here in the comments, like trying to, and I think this is actually a great balance where we have just a show watcher and then we have somebody who's read the books and a show watcher, and we have an audience that loves the books. Leading up to this, Chase, Daenerys was having these quote unquote dragon dreams where it was pretty much like hinting and leading up to this going to be eventually happening. But because they decided to cut that out, I think that if we would have had those included, it would have really scratched that itch for you, because it was something that was really leading up to that point. It was something that was really going to be like building up this sense of like a messiah. And I love that you said it, because I think it is true. It's trying to represent that it is a born again sort of situation. And in the books, I wish they would have done this in the show. And again, I understand because I'm
Budget,
sure the
all the
actress
stuff.
did not want to do it. But Daenerys actually has her hair burn away in the book. So she comes out like completely like almost like a baby born, like she has no hair on her body, completely naked, and she has the dragons. And it's really trying to show like this is not only the birth of a new person, but this is a new age. This is a new beginning in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah, she did. That would have made all of that so interesting, much more interesting. So it's kind of, I think I understand why you have a show, there's only so much time, but I definitely think that would have added to her character arc. And I think honestly, I'm having going back on our other conversation, they could have skipped all of the extras we were adding with the scene. I think that buildup would have made this scene more impactful.
I agree. And I appreciate, Nana, you bringing that up, because I think it's one or the other. I think you either have to extend the scene for her in the fire, or you have those like, and I think that it makes more sense, like her, like putting the eggs in the brazier. Like it makes more sense to have the dragon dreams than to do that, because that's just like her putting the eggs in the brazier. I feel like it's just lazy. Like, oh, they're going to be hatching. She's like warming them up to hatch. Like it's for the dumbs. And I don't think that this should be a show that's like catering to the dumbs. I think that I really think that a lot of shows need to do a better, like they need to trust their audience more and like believe that their audience will understand the message that they're trying to relay.
Yeah, I think they just went with the eggs too early. I 100% agree. I think that could have made her character and brought so much more depth to it. Nightmare, like all of the stuff. And then the nightmares would have shown once again some foreshadowing of like, hey, this is like a potentially insane person.
Yeah. Well, not
Like
only that, but
a
like
lot
something
there.
again, like I
But
wanted to touch on this earlier, but I forgot to. Like, but this really was showing, and something I really appreciate that George R. R. Martin does is he shows magic is a double-edged sword. Like, or how it's described in the book, magic is a sword without a handle. Like you can try to use magic, but it will always hurt you when you do so. Like either try to do everything in a natural way or try to be like just do your best to with what you got. When you start to reach for the unnatural, you are playing with forces you have no control. And I really wish that they would have leaned into that a little bit more, but also like it's I don't know. I think that there's a lot of missed opportunities. I think I should just dive into my film score because I'm diving enough. And again, I know you did your whole thing on just the scenes that the dragon eggs and the dragons were in, which I appreciate. I'm going to go ahead and do for the season in general. I do really like this season. I think there's a lot of good things this season. Like, I really judge the first few episodes of a show on whether I'm going to get involved. So obviously there was enough to get me invested and get me obsessed with this show. I do think that they did a lot of things wrong, specifically in the first episode and maybe even for the first couple episodes, but I also think they picked it back up. But so on that note, I think I'd give it a 7. I think it's very good. It's not the best season of a Game of Thrones by far, but it's definitely does make up for it in the long run.
I'm with you on that. I can get behind that.
Nana did also just say, before we move on to our last section, unfortunately, this came back down to Benoff and Weiss pridefully saying that they made the show for all the common people and not just the nerds. They cut a lot of the magic prophecy dreams because they didn't think that the common people would follow the show, which again, like,
It's hard to argue with them.
it is, but at the same time, like, do you know what the number fastest growing, like, in popularity and one of the most successful financially? It's anime. And anime leads into all of that. Like, people love there's so much magic, there's prophecy, there's dreams. And again, I'm not even saying that this needs to be an anime because we've already dissected that in so many different ways. All I'm saying is a lot of the themes that are in anime you can relate over, and people not only will accept it but love it.
Yeah, I agree. I think once again, it's hard to argue with them because it worked. And it's so easy, I think, in retrospect, because this came out a while way before anime was, what it is now. So it's easy, I think, in hindsight to be like, yeah, but at the time, this was pushing it, having the incest, like it's so hard to. But yeah, looking back, you're like, man, if they made this for the first time now, yes. But I mean,
Yeah,
this came out in
like you said, hindsight
2015. I mean, not 2012.
20,
Yeah. So
2011.
like 2011, yeah, anime was still fucking weird. So like, yeah, I can't front them for that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of weird, let's move on to our final category, which is the X Factor. And for those of you in the audience that are unaware, the X Factor is just whatever we want to give credit for that makes this dragon unique. It can be really anything that is going in there. So, Chayce, on that note, what would you give it for X Factor? These dragons.
I'm gonna go unironically 6'9". I
6'9".
yeah, I said unironically. No, I think that the way that they're brought to being is an amazing X factor. Outside of that, you just don't get enough, and I don't think it's enough to take it over the edge. But it's not sloppy.
I completely agree. I think it's and I do love like because it is a fantasy story where dragons are, like, obviously dragons existed in this universe, so it's not like they're questioning if they were real or not, but they do, like, they're gone. It's like how dinosaurs are for us. Like, people talk about how dinosaurs once ruled the earth. They were once here and they were these magnificent beasts, but they're gone and they're never coming back. And if you listen to the real crazies, they'll tell you if you go to certain parts of the world, they're still there. You just have to go through the most dangerous places and then you'll find it. And it's the same idea with dragons in Westeros. And I really like that they do that. And it's unique that they do that. But at the same time, I do think it's a little flat how, like, because and again, Nana, maybe we'll talk. I'm not maybe. I'd love to talk about this more in book club tomorrow about why Daenerys was given the dragon eggs in general, but it's so just weird that they got it. But I do love this, like, prophecy of, like, resurrecting something, but it also, like, really sets in motion that if you want to use, like, you have to lose something to get something in return. Like, that's almost like how magic works. Like, if you want something great, you have to be willing to give up something great, and that's, like, Daenerys had to be willing to give up Drogo to get those dragons, which, I mean, it's the love of her life. But, if you're trying to conquer the Seven Kingdoms, I'd make that deal.
Make that deal every
I
time.
don't know if I'd give the love of my life, but
And give the love of my
so
life,
on
bro.
that note, like
Exos.
for 3
On that
dragons,
note.
I'm going to give it a 7. Like, I think that it is good, but strictly just for the lore behind it. Design-wise, I think they're pretty basic. Like I said, I love that they make them so colorful. Like, I think that that's a unique aspect of making the babies just so colorful, while the eggs themselves throughout the season did almost look like rocks, but they still looked really good. But 7, I think that that's what I'm going to give it, which the final score for the baby dragons of A Game of Thrones in season 1 come out to, and you nasty fucks are gonna love this, a 6.99. A very nice score in between good and very good. And before we close it up, I did just want to highlight what Nana said here in the chat by saying it may have worked, but it also sealed their fate in the end, since George was making the magic more and more prominent and the story progressed, which again, agree. Like, George is making magic more and more of a bigger deal, because in the first part of the book, magic is almost like, no, there is no such thing as magic, but it stealths there. But guys, that's season 1. Like, that's season 1. Here, what if we do this? Season 1. Or
Yeah. What a journey.
What a journey. I appreciate everybody. We're going to be coming back and talking season 2 very shortly. I might be filling in another movie in between. Still up in the air. I've got to discuss with Chayce off the podcast real quick on that, but we'll be coming back with season 2 very shortly. Just some other things that's on everybody's docket. I am going to be attending. Is that the sound of oil drilling out there?
Probably. Knowing you're freaking out. Is that where you're attending? You're attending an oil drilling conference?
Anna, why do you think I'm doing some? Why do you think I'm talking about oil drilling? Why do you think I'm talking about oil drilling, Nana? But on the note, I am going to be attending FanX in Salt Lake City on September 25th to September 27th. I am making a big banner. I have got some fun costumes that I'm going to be dressing up with. And on the final day, I am actually going to be covering the film Sucker Punch with the only Lady Facade, one of the top drag queens here in Salt Lake City.
That's dope.
We're going to be talking about the movie Sucker Punch. Yeah, it's going to be fun. We're going to do that. And then I will be going around during FanX giving out little baby dragons to people trying to build awareness for the brand, and it's going to just be a grand old time. But Chayce, is there anything you want to plug before we go off for the evening?
I got nothing.
All right. Well, until then, everyone, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe, share it with your mom, share it with your dad, share it with your brother, share it with your sister, share it with someone. You guys know what to do. You're not stuck. I love you all. Good night, and it's great to be back.
That's all for this week's Dragon Lore. Takes cold and hot, spread shore to shore. Enjoyed yourself? Please join the squad. Follow on social media at Big Liz Pod. And one quick reminder before you go, to rate, review, and share the show. Thank you for listening. It means a lot. See you next week, same time, same spot.